Hi, you're on the channel Truth Unraveled, Real Stories, Raw Confessions, the place where the truth doesn't knock. It kicks the door down. The air in La Perla smelled of truffles and expensive perfume. I was on top of the world. 6 months of my life, poured into a single design campaign, had just saved our company a fortune. My boss called me a genius. Across the table, Chloe, the woman I loved, smiled. I thought it was with pride. I reached for her hand, my heart pounding with a future I was sure we'd build together. I told her my plan to finally ask for the big raise, the one that would change everything for us. The room felt electric with possibility. The change was instantaneous. It wasn't a slow shift in the atmosphere. It was a door slamming shut. The warmth that had been glowing in my chest just seconds before, the pride, the hope, the love met an arctic front. Her hand didn't just slip away from mine. It retreated, as if my touch had suddenly become unpleasant. The movement was so deliberate, so coldly precise, that it left my fingers feeling foolish and exposed. Hovering over the starched white linen, she didn't look at me. Instead, her eyes focused on the condensation beading on the bowl of her martini glass. She brought it to her lips, taking a slow, measured sip, letting the silence stretch out into something heavy and suffocating. The playful light in her eyes, from moments before, had vanished, replaced by a flat, appraising coolness. It was the look she reserved for underwhelming business proposals or subpar service, not for the man who loved her. A faint, pitying smile touched her lips, the kind you'd give a child who announced they were running away to join the circus. It was that smile that truly stole the air from my lungs. Leo, 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 she sighed, and my name in her mouth sounded like a synonym for naive. Her voice was a soft, condescending whisper, each word meticulously chosen to inflict maximum damage. With minimal effort, it was so much worse than yelling. Be serious, she continued, her gaze finally flicking up to meet mine, but there was no connection there, only assessment. That raise you're dreaming of, it's a fantasy, a pleasant, little daydream you entertain to get through the day. She paused, letting the dismissal hang in the air between us. The clink of silverware from other tables sounded miles away. Your salary, she said, and I could hear the invisible quotation marks she placed around the word. At single quotes s nada. Reward, it's a courtesy, it's what they pay you to be. Pleasant, to be adequate, to not make trouble. You execute other people's visions well enough. You're a wonderful follower, a loyal soldier. She leaned forward slightly, and for a horrifying second, I thought she might reach for my hand again. Instead, she just lowered her voice further, making her next words even more intimate and brutal. But a leader, a builder, a visionary. She shook her head, the pity in her eyes now unmistakable and utterly corrosive. You're a nice guy with nice, small ideas. And nice, small ideas don't build empires. They don't build the kind of future I actually want. I need a partner who's already arrived, who doesn't need to ask for permission to be great, not one who's perpetually asking for directions. The world didn't shatter, it iced over. The noisy, vibrant restaurant faded into a dull, muted painting. I could see her lips moving, but the sound was distorted, as if I were hearing her from underwater. A courtesy, adequate, a nice guy with nice ideas. Never be enough. The words weren't just an insult to my career. They were a verdict on my entire being. They were a demolition of every shared dream, every quiet conversation about our future, every sacrifice I'd made for us. I sat there, paralyzed, watching the woman I wanted to marry, the woman I'd planned a life with, calmly dismantle my worth with the casual, uncheckable certainty of someone stating a simple, undeniable fact. The foundation of my world didn't crack. It vaporized, leaving me suspended in a terrifying, silent free fall over a void I never knew was there. The silence in the car on the way home was thick, almost physical. It pressed against my eardrums, ringing in my ears with an obsessive, unbearable hum. I stared blankly at the road ahead, feeling each of her words embedding itself into my skin like icy splinters. A courtesy, adequate, never be enough. She chattered about a new collection at the boutique, about a friend's disastrous wedding, about a boring meeting as if she hadn't just noticed, but had genuinely not said anything important. Her voice was background noise, white noise drowning out the crashing world inside me. I was a spectator in my own car, a ghost at the wheel who mechanically shifted gears, turned, and braked, while my real essence was somewhere far away, shattered into millions of sharp fragments. At home, she immediately headed for the shower, humming some carefree tune. I remained standing in the middle of the living room, in complete darkness, unable to move. As if paralyzed, the air smelled of her expensive floral shower gel, the one I had always loved. Now that scent triggered only nausea. I stood there, until the water stopped running, until I heard her footsteps heading toward the bedroom. I didn't follow. I couldn't bear the thought of lying next to her in that bed, surrounded by the illusion of a life that had just been exposed as a pathetic fiction. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I called in sick, my voice a hollow, alien sound to my own ears. I walked out onto the cramped fire escape of my apartment, the cold winter iron seeping through my sweatpants. The city sprawled below me, a concrete jungle of ambition and success that, according to Chloe, I was destined to only ever observe from the sidelines. I replayed her words on a loop. A courtesy, adequate, a nice guy with nice ideas. The humiliation was a live wire, burning through my veins, scorching everything in its path. For hours, I just sat there, frozen, watching the steam rise from manholes, and the distant movement of people living lives I could no longer comprehend. I felt utterly dismantled. The man I thought I was, the talented designer, the loving partner, the future husband, had been declared an inadequate fiction by the one person whose opinion had shaped my reality. But then, a strange thing began to happen. The initial, paralyzing shock began to recede, like a tide going out. And what it left behind wasn't just emptiness. It was a cold, clean, and terrifying clarity. The pain was excruciating, but it was also purifying. It was as if her contempt had acted as a chemical agent, burning away every last bit of my doubt, my fear, my desperate need for her approval. All that remained was a stark, unadorned truth. She was wrong. The emotion that rose up to replace the devastation wasn't joy or hope. It was rage, a cold, focused, and utterly silent fury. It didn't make me want to scream or break things. It made me want to build something so solid, so undeniable, so magnificent that it would shatter her condescending worldview into a million pieces. I stood up, my joints stiff from the cold. The city below no longer seemed like a taunt, it looked like a challenge. I walked back inside. My mind, which had been frozen and numb just moments before, was now racing, calculating, planning with a precision I didn't know I possessed. I didn't write a heartfelt resignation letter. I opened my laptop, found my boss's email address, and wrote to blunt, uncompromising sentences. Effective immediately, I am resigning from my position. Thank you for the opportunity. I hovered over the send button for only a second. There was no fear, only that cold, electrifying certainty. I clicked it. There was no safety net. There was only the exhilarating, terrifying free fall. And for the first time that day, I felt truly, completely alive. The free fall wasn't punishment. It was liberation. It was the first spark igniting in the darkness she had created. The silence that followed sending that email was louder than any sound I'd ever heard. It was the sound of a door slamming shut on my entire former life. For a full minute, I just stared at the screen, at the sent confirmation, my heart hammering against my ribs, not with panic, but with a terrifying, primal exhilaration. There was no going back. The adequate employee was gone. Now there was only a man standing on the edge of a cliff, and the only way was forward into the unknown. The initial adrenaline surge faded, replaced by a cold, stark reality. I was jobless. The courtesy salary was gone. Rent was due in 3 weeks. The fear was a physical presence in my cramped apartment, but it was now a fear I could use. It was no longer the fear of her disapproval. It was the fear of failure on my own terms. And that made all the difference. I brewed a pot of coffee so strong it was almost sludge. The bitter taste was my new fuel. This wasn't about proving her wrong anymore. It was about proving myself right. My mind, sharpened by a clarity born of pure defiance, went straight to the one person I knew would be both a weapon and an ally. Elena Rostova. Chloe's rival, the woman she spoke of with a mix of venom and secret envy. Finding her contact wasn't hard. Crafting the email took me 3 hours and 17 drafts. This wasn't a job application. It was a manifesto. I attached my portfolio every nice design, every adequate campaign, including the one that had saved the company millions. I didn't ask for a job. I proposed a partnership. I outlined a vision for a consulting firm that would be everything Chloe stayed. Corporate world was not agile, ruthless, and brilliant. I hit send as the sun was rising, my hands steady for the first time in days. The wait was a special kind of agony. Every ping from my phone sent a jolt through me. Doubt tried to creep back in. She think you're insane. She forwarded to Chloe as a joke, but the memory of Chloe's pitying smile smothered the doubt. 24 hours later, a notification appeared, not an email, a direct message on a professional network. It was from Elena. My blood went cold, then hot. The message was terse. Leo, your proposal is intriguing. Let's talk. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., a link to a video call followed. I didn't sleep. I prepared. When her face filled my screen the next morning, she was all sharp angles and focused intensity. She skipped the small talk. I've seen your work for Henderson, she said, her voice crisp and devoid of warmth. It was a statement, not a compliment. It was competent. Why are you reaching out to me? I didn't flatter her. I didn't badmouth Chloe. I looked directly into the camera. Because competent isn't enough. I'm tired of executing someone else's safe vision. My former partner thought my ideas were nice. I believe they're profitable. I think you know the difference. A slow, razor-sharp smile spread across her face. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator recognizing another. My rival, she said, the word dripping with delicious contempt, has a singular talent for mistaking diamonds for glass. She likes things polished and predictable. I prefer things that cut. Let's see if you can draw blood. Our office was my kitchen table, littered with coffee cups, schematics, and take-out containers. The first month was a brutal baptism by fire. We worked 18-hour days. Elena was a merciless taskmaster, challenging every assumption, pushing every idea to its absolute limit. The nice guy in me wanted to please, to find consensus. She eviscerated that impulse. Nice doesn't win clients, she'd snap. Brilliance does, confidence does. Be undeniable. Our first target was Ethertech, a tech giant Chloe's firm had been courting for years with polished, safe presentations. We didn't present, we ambushed. Our pitch was a surgical strike on their core business model, showing them not just a new ad campaign, but a blueprint for industry domination. It was audacious, arrogant, and utterly brilliant. When we finished the video call, there was silence on their end. Then, the lead executive said, "Well, that was not what we were expecting. Send us the contract." We stole them, not by being better, by being different, by being fearless. That first victory wasn't celebrated with champagne. Elena just looked at me across the messy table and gave a single, curt nod. It was the highest praise I'd ever received. With each new client, with every signed contract, the ghost of Chloe's words grew fainter, drowned out by the relentless sound of building something real. I wasn't the adequate follower anymore. I was the architect, and the blueprint was all mine. The email from our lawyer arrived on a Tuesday morning. It was crisp, professional, and utterly devoid of emotion. It simply stated that our fledgling consultancy, Rostova and Associates, had been formally valued at over $1 million. I read the figure 3 times, $1 million. The number should have sparked fireworks in my chest, a triumphant shout from the rooftops. Instead, I felt a profound, almost unnerving quiet. The frantic, coffee-fueled energy of the past months dissolved, leaving behind a deep, resonant calm. The burning rage that had forged me had finally cooled into tempered steel. I wasn't elated. I was at peace. I didn't call Elena immediately. I didn't update my social media with a humble brag post. I simply sat there at my kitchen table, the same table where we'd built this empire from nothing, and watched the morning sun wash over the blueprints and contracts that were now worth 7 figures. The silence in the apartment was no longer empty. It was full. It was the sound of a promise kept to myself. Later, that afternoon, driven by a force I didn't fully understand, I found myself driving across town. I didn't have a destination in mind, but my hands seemed to know the way, turning familiar corners with a muscle memory of a life I'd left behind. I ended up idling across the street from La Perla. The same valet stood outside. The same soft glow emanated from its windows. It was a perfect, unchanged diorama of my past. And then I saw her, Chloe. She was at the same table by the window, surrounded by the same colleagues from her firm. She was holding court, laughing that polished, practiced laugh, one hand gracefully gesturing with a wine glass. She was playing the same part in the same small play, perfectly cast as the rising star in her own limited universe. I watched her for a long time, waiting for the old ache to return, for the bitterness to flare. But nothing came. From this distance, through the lens of my new reality, the scene didn't look glamorous or powerful. It looked small, predictable. The ambitions that had once seemed so vast to me, the corner office, the VP title, the approval of her boss, now seemed like trivial prizes in a game one had stopped playing. She was still climbing her carefully structured corporate ladder, while I had built my own damn skyscraper next door. The contrast wasn't even satisfying. It was merely factual. She hadn't just lost me. She had completely underestimated the very material she had so carelessly discarded. I thought about sending a text, a photo of the lawyer's email, a simple "remember this." But the impulse died as quickly as it came. Any message, any contact, would have been a reaction. It would have meant I was still living in her narrative, trying to win her approval even in defiance. True victory wasn't in her acknowledgement. It was in my absolute and utter indifference. I put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb. Without a second glance, my phone buzzed in the queue folder. It was Elena, the preview read. New lead. Bigger fish. Your ideas were not adequate. I could almost hear her sharp, approving smirk through the screen. A real smile, the first of the day, finally touched my lips. This was my life now. This was my circle. I drove toward my new apartment, a brighter, airier space in a neighborhood that didn't hold a single memory of her. The ghost had been laid to rest, not with a dramatic exorcism, but with quiet disregard. She had told me I would never be enough for her, and as I finally understood, standing in that silence, she had been right. I was never meant for her small world of courtesies and adequate performances. I was meant for so much more. My success wasn't a rebuttal to her, it was my liberation from her. The final, silent victory wasn't in the $1 million valuation. It was in the peaceful, unwavering knowledge that I had finally, truly, become enough for myself. This has been my story on Truth Unraveled. Has someone ever tried to put a ceiling on your dreams? Have you used their doubt as fuel to build something extraordinary? Share your story of defiance in the comments below. Your experience could be the spark someone else needs. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Truth Unraveled, Real Stories, Raw Confessions, and hit the bell to join us for more powerful stories that tear down the facades. Until next time, stay resilient, stay undeniable, and never, ever let someone Elsa's limited imagination dictate the scale of your dreams.